Hello, everyone. And hello, Daka.
Hello, Sonny, and hello, chat.
Hello, lovely people from Chatland. Mr. Duma, Mr. Prone, Mrs. I was about to gonna say Mr. L, but it's, of course, Miss L. Hello, you lovely lady. How are you doing? So, we're about to get started with the Game of Thrones recap stream, and my god, what an episode. What an episode.
That was a beautiful episode. A lot happened, mainly consisting of obviously the Battle of the Bastards and Marine, of course. But it was a well done episode.
Indeed. I loved it. Loved the fighting scenes. Loved everything about it, man. This was like my favorite episode so far, to be fair.
I know, right? Because lately we've just been getting a lot of episodes full of dialogue and story, and to finally have an episode that just concentrates on battles is just beautiful.
Yeah. I missed that. It's been a while. Alright, shall we dive straight into this?
Okay, so the first scene that we have is Marine, and she is under siege by the three masters. So clearly they have broken their pact that they had with Tyrion, which is obviously no warmongering, and they went ahead and took Marine under siege. Moving on from the siege, we have the Khaleesi and Tyrion talking about what they should do about the situation. And Khaleesi takes the approach of destroying the ships, killing the masters, and then going to their hometown and destroying their cities. And from that, Tyrion is able to tell that she is taking the approach that the Mad King will take. So he references the wildfire and that she shouldn't take that path. And then she goes ahead and agrees with Tyrion, and they come up with another plan on how to deal with the matter. But this scene clearly shows that Khaleesi is incapable of handling a situation like this by herself, and it shows the warmongering, the Mad King side of her, and what she can become without the advice of others.
Exactly. She needs Tyrion. She needs somebody with the wits that Tyrion has, who knows how to handle those sorts of situations. Else we're gonna go straight back a couple hundred years ago. Well, not even like 20 years ago, back to the era of the Mad King. And yes, that was not a good era, of course, and the Khaleesi would not have handled the situation correctly. At the end, she would have filled the bay with a lot of ships that were on fire, and she still had nothing, besides a few ships from the Ironborn, which we later learned in this episode. But yeah, she doesn't handle these situations well, and that is, in a way, it's okay. She's never been in this sort of situation before. Now, it is quite funny how I really want to know how she would even handle this freaking raid on Westeros if she didn't even know how to handle this correctly. Because that's not gonna end well. Like, she needs Tyrion. If Tyrion was gone, if Tyrion never showed up, she'd be in a hell of a situation.
100%, because she just focuses on her manpower. She's so full of herself. Whenever she gets in a situation like this, the first thing she thinks of is, I'm just gonna destroy them with my Dothraki army, with the Unsullied and my three dragons. That's how I'm going to take over these three masters and just rule this side of the world. And then that's how I'm going to take over Westeros, just by warmongering, killing anyone who is in my path. And obviously that's not the way to go. That's just going to cause a rebellion, and it's just not going to really work out. So, thank fuck that we have Tyrion here to advise her and actually teach her you can go through a diplomatic way, and it's not everything is solved by slaughtering each other.
Exactly. So the next scene pretty much sums up what's gonna happen, and which is an amazing take. Like, I love how the scene started up, like setting up something differently. Like, we all thought for a split second they were there to discuss their surrendering, like the Khaleesi surrendering to the masters.
Definitely.
But that did not happen.
Well, moving on to the second scene, we do have the Khaleesi and the three masters discussing peace treaties, which was obviously Tyrion's idea. The three masters go to approach of Khaleesi's surrender. They also mention the fact that they want the two dragons slain in the dungeon. They don't mention the other dragon. I'm not sure if they are aware that the other dragon exists. But while they're discovering their treaties, Khaleesi mentions it's not their surrender. They're discussing. It's the masters. And when she mentions that her third dragon, the biggest dragon of them all, appears and she goes ahead and rides that dragon, which obviously threatens the three masters. And while she's heading towards the boats with the dragon, the other two dragons that were once captivated are able to escape and join her in raiding these boats, which obviously frighten the three masters, and they come to realization that they have been defeated. So the two masters offer the other master, and Grey Worm approaches these three masters and kills those two that were cowards and trying to find a way to escape. Tyrion approaches the last remaining master and tells him to go ahead and go back to his hometown and let everyone know that Khaleesi is here with her dragons.
Exactly. Pretty much gonna strike fear again in everyone's heart. This display of power, and it is all set up because of Tyrion. Like, if Tyrion was not here to do this, to set this thing in motion, things would have panned out way differently as they have done right now. So it's, yeah, I'm really glad that this went down the way it did. Although I'm not gonna lie, I would have loved to see those dragons take down that entire fleet. It's been like, we've been waiting for some dragon action for like 6 seasons now, really. And this was very satisfying. Like, let's put it up front. This was a very satisfying scene, and I would have not wanted it to go down any different way, but it would be amazing to see every freaking ship on fire, wouldn't it?
What I thought was gonna happen was that Khaleesi was going to go ahead with a maid dragon, start pillaging these ships, and the other two dragons, not to join Khaleesi, but almost threaten the Khaleesi, as they were captivated by the Khaleesi and they were left alone in that dungeons for a really long period of time. And now they finally escaped, so I thought they might rebel against the Khaleesi a bit at the start, until obviously the big dragon teaches them a lesson. That's what I honestly thought at the start as well. But moving on to the actual fight with the dragons burning the ships, I did expect it to be a bit more. I was expecting to see more boats burn. It was as if they were only aiming at 1 or 2 ships. We didn't really see a lot. I would have expected them to fly around just burning every single ship, but they didn't really show that.
No. Oh, well, good for them. Good for them, because else they wouldn't have had the ships, and we would have waited for Khaleesi to go make the beautiful journey to Westeros in like another, like, it would happen in like another 5 seasons. So
Whoa, not with Peter Baelish's bullet train, my friend.
fair enough. That bullet train has been immense, and it has appeared once again in this episode. By the way, let's put it up front. The Vale is quite far away from Winterfell, but Peter Baelish's bullet train does not give a rat's ass. Like,
You're not worrying.
Sansa just went over there overnight, and in 3 hours she managed to teleport herself to the Vale and then all the way back to Winterfell. That is impressive.
It's so stupid. Okay, moving on from this scene. The third scene, we have Jon Snow with Sansa approaching Ramsay, and they're having a discussion before the war, which always happens between generals. Ramsay demands them to surrender. He wants Sansa by his side, and he wants Jon Snow to kneel down. And then Ramsay says, if you do so, you will be forgiven. Now, Jon Snow takes a different approach and says, Ramsay, rather than having this pointless war and all these men being slaughtered, let's have a one-on-one battle to settle the matters. Now, Ramsay mentions that he's aware that he has heard the stories about Jon Snow and how he's a capable fighter. So Ramsay says, well, I have Rickon. So if you don't surrender, I will kill Rickon. And the moment he mentions Rickon, Sansa steps up and says, Ramsay, you will die by tomorrow. And then she leaves off, meaning obviously they couldn't have a settlement, and they are going to go to war.
Yes, it was. It was a very tense. It was the display, like what Ramsay did there is like, that was so freaking so Ramsay. That's amazing. Like, that's what I loved about it. It was so Ramsay. The entire scene, the embodiment of Ramsay came forth in that scene. He is so vicious in the way he spoke about the dogs just waiting for them. Like, you're all beautiful, man. My dogs would love you. Oh my god. Maybe your balls.
That was beautiful.
It was amazing. Like that scene, and the way that Sansa held herself together, that was beautiful to see as well. Of course, she's been through a whole lot with Ramsay, and like the way she held herself together was just amazing to see. And I love the approach that Jon Snow tried to do. Of course, Ramsay would never fall for that. We all knew there was going to be a battle. Ramsay would never get off his horse, fight Jon Snow one-on-one. We are all pretty damn confident that Jon Snow would kick Ramsay's ass, but Ramsay took the smart way around and faced on the open fields.
The thing with Sansa, the thing that I get with Sansa is almost as if she's not doing this for the good of Winterfell and her people. It's almost as if this is personal revenge. She doesn't care about what happens to Rickon. It almost sounds like she doesn't care what happens to Rickon or what's the aftermath of the war. She just wants Bolton out. She wants Ramsay to die. That's why obviously she wasn't wavered in that situation. She was pretty strong-willed, and you can see that in her face and in the expression that she gave up. So she's a pretty strong character, but I have a feeling it's just for pure vengeance and revenge, and that's all it is. She doesn't care about Winterfell and what happens to Winterfell. She just wants Ramsay to die.
Yeah. Of course, there is of course, she feels towards Winterfell as well. She has feelings towards Winterfell. It's her home, but indeed, I think her feeling for vengeance outweighs that of Winterfell. So yes, I think you're right there. I totally missed the sub. That's why the Buds Gaming. Thank you for subbing. Wow.
Oh, Buds Gaming.
The one and only. All right.
Moving on to the next scene 4. We have Jon Snow. He's making tactical decisions on how to take out Ramsay. Now, obviously, Jon Snow is aware that he doesn't have as many men as Ramsay does. In fact, he has less than half of what Ramsay has to offer. As well as obviously, Jon Snow, his army is quite divided. You have wildlings, and then you obviously have the rest of the north fighting with Jon Snow. So I wouldn't say his army is as disciplined as Ramsay's. So he goes. So he comes to the conclusion of being defensive rather than offensive. He wants to build trenches around his armies, preventing obviously the cavalry from marching into their flanks, as obviously horses can't charge when there is trenches. Sansa, she steps up and mentions the fact that she can be of help, and that Ramsay is not stupid, and that he's going to hurt them in other ways, apart from obviously marching with his army. And obviously Jon Snow stands by his decisions and says he will outsmart Ramsay and he won't fall into his traps. But then Sansa goes back to mentions that they will fall into his traps. Then Sansa again, she mentions something stupid, and she says that Ramsay has a bigger army. She basically mentions the obvious things, the obvious facts that Jon Snow touched on, and Jon Snow's like, Sansa, I know what you're talking about, what you're saying. They're all relevant, but they're all obvious, and we already know. And they have some sort of discussion, but it's as if they're not on the same page and they're arguing. So they are a bit torn apart, I would say.
Yeah, and for less obvious reasons, that is. I believe that the reason why Sansa doesn't come forth and just says the truth, because she sent a letter out to Peter Baelish, and she would have that army of the Vale at her side fairly quickly, as we saw. A little bit too fast, but that's okay. I think the reason why she just didn't come forth right there and then was because as soon as she mentions that, and they don't go out in open field and meet Ramsay at that point in time, Ramsay would take suspicion up on this. They had this conversation with Ramsay. So what's going to happen then is that they're probably going to send out scouting parties all around, and the army of the Vale would have gotten picked up fairly easily by Ramsay's army. So I believe that is the reason why she didn't come forth right there and then. That is something she wanted to get that out on the table, but she knew she couldn't. If she would have told him that, it would have all gone south, and her grand scheme and grand plan would have not worked out.
Definitely. I mean, it all makes sense. If Jon Snow was to play defensive, wait for Ramsay to attack, then obviously when Ramsay is attacking Jon Snow, the Knights of the Vale could flank Ramsay by attacking from the rear, causing obviously his causing Ramsay's army to disband. But obviously later on, we'll see that obviously doesn't work out.
Yeah, yeah. Classic Ramsay setup.
Yep. Okay, so moving on to next scene, scene 5. You have Jon Snow enter Melisandre's tent, and he approaches her and begs for her not to revive him if he dies again. Now, Melisandre mentions the fact that she does what the Lord of Light commands, and she does her best to interpret the messages that he gives off. And if Jon Snow was to die, and if the messages given by the Lord of Light were to revive him again, that she'll go ahead and do so. She also mentions the fact that the Lord of Light must have a purpose for Jon Snow for him to come back.
Yeah. Another nice scene. It weighs heavy upon the heart if you hear that stuff. Like, you don't want him to die. And at the end, like how Lady Melisandre interpreted all this stuff was pretty interesting. Like, even if it's against Jon Snow's will, she would still revive him because it would have been the will of the Lord of Light, which is an interesting take. It would have been quite nice to see, although I really doubt, like, let's say if Jon Snow were to die during that battle, or we all know he didn't, but let's say he would have died, I don't think he would have come back. I don't think he's gonna get another revive, is what I'm trying to say.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the first one, I wouldn't say it was a shock, since everyone who analysed the situation before the season started realised that Jon Snow's going to come back. Well, he has to have come back since Melisandre was there at the keep. But now that he has come back, and obviously wasn't surprised that he's come back, I doubt they'll go ahead and kill him and revive him. I mean, if he dies again, he might as well just stack up good.
Yeah. Else we'll get a really weird situation with some sort of like invincible warrior type character. So next time he dies, he's not coming back. I'm pretty damn confident about that.
Okay, moving on to scene 6, you have the Ironborns, aka Theon Greyjoy, and Yara having a meeting with the Khaleesi, so they're finally able to go to Meereen, and they're talking about a pact. Obviously, Yara wants to be the ruler, the king of the Iron Islands, and the Khaleesi is willing to help, so as long as obviously the Khaleesi could be the king, well, I guess the queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Now the thing is, it almost seems as if the Khaleesi and Yara have a few things in common. Both of their fathers were assholes. They were disgusting individuals. They're the first people to be a female ruler. Obviously, Yara's gonna be the first female queen to rule the Iron Islands, and then obviously Khaleesi is the first, let's say, queen of Meereen and the queen of the Seven Kingdoms. So it's quite interesting to see that they have things in common.
Yeah, it's a lovely scene with her. I nearly thought they were gonna make out there and then. Not gonna lie.
A sex scene would have been nice.
Yes, we've not seen that in quite some time, but unfortunately not yet. But who knows what the future will hold for Lady Yara and Lady Dany. Who knows?
We can only pray.
We can only all pray. Fingers crossed. No, but that's an interesting take, and like they're common. They have a common goal. They're both being suppressed by men. That's the main incentive for Dany to help out Yara. Both uncles, like well Yara's uncle and of course entire Westeros has never had a queen. So it's all like they're gonna help each other out in a great way. It's gonna be an interesting take, and I'm really looking forward to what's gonna happen when Dany and Yara and Theon meet Euron. Hopefully, like, might be an interesting scene to see, like, if they meet in the open seas with freaking Dany's dragons and Euron and all that stuff. That would be pretty amazing.
It would be wonderful to see an epic battle between the Khaleesi and him in like an epic sea battle. We haven't had that yet, I don't believe, a naval battle in Game of Thrones yet. And hopefully, if that does happen, I am expecting Theon to die. Maybe Theon saves Yara or the Khaleesi and dies in that way. I mean, he's a wonderful character, but if an epic battle like that was to happen, I would expect for a character to die off as a consequence of that battle.
Could be. I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Let's move on to the next scene.
Okay, so next scene 7, we have both armies. So Jon Snow's army and Bolton's army doing a stare down, you could see Ramsay holding something by a rope, and as he approaches, exactly that's Rickon. So he obviously has Rickon now as a captive. I know something interesting. He lets Rickon loose and mentions to Rickon that they are going to play a game. Obviously, Rickon is not aware of what's about to happen. So he starts walking, and then Ramsay goes ahead and says, Rickon, I want you to run. This is a part of the game. So as Rickon slowly starts to run, you actually see Ramsay take out a bow and arrow. So now you obviously know Rickon could die. He has to go ahead and dodge these arrows. Jon Snow notices, jumps on his horse, and now heads towards Rickon. Now, the stupid thing about this situation is what Rickon does is he runs in a straight line. Now, obviously, if an individual had common sense, if you had someone with a bow and arrow shoot towards you, normally a person would go ahead and think, whoa, let me go in a zigzag situation, or do a few barrel rolls, or just do something not to die. But Rickon's like, fuck it, I'm gonna run in a straight line and I'm going to reach Jon Snow. Now I understand if Ramsay had a AK-47 or something that's gonna fire rapidly, going in a zigzag is not gonna help. But it's a bow and arrow, so Ramsay has to take aim, he has to draw that arrow, shoot, you have the wind in action. There's so many ways for Rickon to actually survive here, but obviously to move on the plot and the story, Rickon has to die, as Rickon is the true heir to Winterfell. So Ramsay cannot be the leader and the ruler of Winterfell if obviously Rickon is alive. So to have that storyline, to have that plot play out, Rickon has to die. So actually, sadly, Rickon does die just before Jon Snow is able to reach him. Now, this goes back to what Sansa said. Sansa said that Ramsay has set out a trap and that Ramsay's not stupid. And here you actually see that play out. Ramsay was not stupid and he does set off a trap. Now, Jon Snow sees Rickon dead on the ground. So Jon Snow goes ahead and charges forward. There is an ice cream man in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear that ice cream man.
No, nope. But thanks for the heads up. Dude, I'm dying for an ice cream, not gonna lie.
No, I'm exactly now I want an ice cream. I'm crying. And it's quite hot in England. But anyway, going back to the scene. Jon Snow, he gets blinded by hatred and violence. So obviously now he totally forgets about his master plan on being defensive and he charges forward with his horsemen. And as he's charging forward, Ramsay's archers, they fire on Jon Snow. Jon Snow doesn't get hurt, obviously, since he has plot armor, but his horse does die. Now, the rest of his army does obviously see this happen, so they go ahead and they charge forward, and you have these horses clashing. Jon Snow is about to die, obviously, since Ramsay's forces are going towards Jon Snow, but Jon Snow does get the backup of his own cavalry, and we just hear a massive clash between these two armies and an epic battle.
Yeah. Well, like going back to the scene with Rickon, it is it's like I loved how it was all set up to be. I just love that stuff because that was like he's a freaking genius. Let's put it up front. Ramsay Bolton is a freaking genius. The way he set this entire thing up, and the reason why he did is, I think, is like to draw out Jon Snow to come forth and to make the entire army come towards them instead of doing the battle the way Jon Snow wanted it to pan out. Now, it was so beautiful to see, and exactly where Rickon died is that's where Ramsay knew that. That's when Ramsay found out that Jon Snow was in perfect sight for all his archers. So he knew his archers could hit Jon Snow from there. So that is the second barrage of arrows. Now, of course, Jon Snow managed to go forth and ride towards Ramsay. I do not know what the hell Jon Snow was thinking there and what he was planning to do, but still, it was amazing. And the most beautiful of all scenes is when Jon Snow stood there and the entire army was coming towards him after he fell off his horse, and you just saw like all these horses clash into each other. That was amazing, and that is something like Tyrion Lannister points out in the chat, is something we haven't seen before in Game of Thrones. This sort of massive scale medieval battle. Like this is the sort of stuff that went down in medieval ages, like two armies meeting in open field, clashing into each other, blood, gore, and just confusion. It is that moment when luck goes, that skill totally goes 100% out of the way and luck takes place. Like anyone, no matter how skilled you are, could fall at any point, whether it's by 1,000 arrows falling on you, whether it's by not looking over your shoulder and a random guy just comes plowing in. And we've seen at least 15 situations where Jon Snow could have died, but because of all the chaos, he managed to survive. And of course, he did an awesome job fighting all these men, but the chaos was unreal during that fight.
I mean, firstly, I would just like to mention that Jon Snow, his KD is unbelievable. The amount of people that he was slaying while all that was going on was incredible. He must have killed at least 20, 30 men just by himself. Secondly, Ramsay, like you mentioned, he is a fantastic general. This guy is a genius. When the horses were clashing, he still sent his archers to rain down, just because he knew he still had the men to spare, even if he was to lose that cavalry charge, just because his archers are raining down. All he wanted was Jon Snow to die there, so he was like, fuck it, archers still rain down. Even if we're gonna kill our own friendlies, it's worth it. And obviously that's a brave thing to do. Normally a general wouldn't do so, he wouldn't really risk it. But since he knew he had the men, he was like, I'm gonna go ahead and do so. Thirdly, I want to go back to Rickon's death. I want to quickly mention the fact that his death was pointless. This guy, we haven't seen him in so many seasons. I totally forgot that he existed until recently when he was mentioned again. And here he is, he appeared again. Now he could be an important character. He could be the ruler of Winterfell by his brother, Jon Snow, obviously stepbrother, and his sister. You can see the Starks reuniting. Arya Stark's also coming back. Their family is being rebuilt, and bam, he dies just as he comes back on, and it is pointless. I felt no emotion with him dying just because there was no connection with this character. We saw no character development with him. He appeared and then he disappeared, which was quite disappointing, but obviously it needs to be done for the story to move on.
Yes, indeed. Now, going a little bit back again towards the Archer bit, what you talk about, I love the fact as well that Ramsay just gave the order to shoot arrows into his own men and into the Stark army, into the rebelling army. And on the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, we had Davos standing on the other side with the exact same scenario. His archers knocked the arrows and about to shoot, but Davos said, hold fire, we cannot do this. There's our own men are in there. Ramsay, of course, does not give a rat's ass.
I do want to mention one thing back, quickly going back. Just before they started fighting, if you notice, there were stakes of people burning. And once again, I believe this was by Ramsay's side. It's just a basic tactical thing they did in the medieval times to, I guess, break the enemy's morale as they see their comrades burning before their eyes on the stakes before the battle begins. Which once again, it shows how smart and how tactically strategic Ramsay really is.
Yes, he is he really is a tactical genius. We've seen more stuff coming forth in later scenes, but yeah, let's just go move on to that.
Okay, so next scene, scene 8, we have Jon Snow's armies clashing with Ramsay's, slaughtering each other. And what happens is that you see Ramsay's pikemen, they actually form around Jon Snow and create what's known as a shield wall, where the soldiers actually come close tight with each other and put down their shields. So it's almost impossible to penetrate defenses. And with the long spikes out, it's virtually now almost impossible. And the thing is, they're not 100% surrounded. The south of Jon Snow's army, there's almost a wall of dead bodies, and the pikemen, they form a shield wall around those dead bodies. So Jon Snow isn't 100% trapped, but that's almost the case. And what happens is Ramsay's men, they slowly start marching forward and drawing Jon Snow's army closer and closer as a pack, since obviously they now have nowhere to run. They're being surrounded by these spears until they notice, obviously, they have these bodies behind them for them to crawl over and actually escape. You do see them retaliate back. You see the giant, he's trying to actually take these shields apart, but there's so much the giant could do by himself. Now, if he had a big weapon or something with himself to actually destroy these shields, now imagine if he had like a massive tree-like weapon for him to sweep these soldiers. If that was the case, they could have escaped. But since only one giant and a bunch of wildlings and Ramsay's men just surrounded, they don't have spears, they only have shields and swords, so they cannot retaliate against this shield wall. So they actually trample back towards the pile of dead bodies, and you see Jon Snow on the ground being stepped upon. And a beautiful scene occurs where you see Jon Snow slowly rising, and it goes back to the scene. I saw this on Twitter. They showed a picture of the Khaleesi with all the slaves, the first slaves that she actually released, where they were calling her mother, and she was like in the middle and they were all surrounding her. This was the same exact scene, but it was Jon Snow riding among the bodies of all the dead, and it was just a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Now, towards the end of the scene, something fantastic happens, and that's the Knights of the Vale. And here you see Peter Baelish and Sansa Stark riding together, and here's the backup that Jon Snow really needed in order to turn this battle to his side. So what the army does is, Littlefinger's quite smart here, so he breaks his cavalry into two. One part of his cavalry, they charge straight behind the wall. Now normally horses, a cavalry wouldn't really charge the pikemen, but because they're flanking, the pikes are not going towards the horses, so they could go ahead and break the shield wall into two and charge in. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if some of Jon Snow's men did die, since the horses charged straight in. But while that was occurring, the rest of the cavalry, they were riding along the wall and thinning out the wall for Jon Snow's men to go ahead and break the other side of the shield wall, which was pretty intelligent by Peter Baelish's side.
Yeah, beautiful setup. Lots of again going a little bit back to seeing the tactics. You see so many amazing stuff that Ramsay thought of during this scene. So first of all, of course, we had this Roman tactic of the shields and the lines of shield men standing behind each other. So there's rows. So if one guy falls up front, then you have the other one that's standing behind him walk forward and take his position. So it is basically something that cannot be stopped. They were screwed. If Peter Baelish didn't ride in, they would all going to die there and then, which was a tactical genius thing to do. Now, of course, a bit of luck was in play as well, because a massive pile of bodies formed a natural wall. Well, not that natural, but it formed a wall behind them. So that was a bit of luck on their side. But however, seeing this tactic come to be was amazing. This Roman tactic. Now, of course, we also saw the large pikes. They're all pikemen, and another reason, of course, for these pikes is you can make sure that the enemies don't come too close. But what we also saw in one of the scenes was they used those pikes very effectively against the giant, against 1-1. So that is another amazing thing that he thought of it. Okay, so they have a giant. He must have known this. So what we do against the giant? We need arrows. We need anything to keep this bad boy at bay. So this tactic just worked out fantastically. Now I am overly confident that he could have done more during that scene, because he's a freaking giant, and all he needed to do was just swing and break off that army. They could not do anything else. They're freaking pikemen. They are just there and they can poke at you. Now, of course, 1-1 is quite a large, massive person to poke at, but I do believe if he were to have taken some sort of weapon into combat, even if it was a freaking tree stump, man, he could have done massive damage to that setup. Just break it open, make sure everyone could get out, kill them all from the side. That is something that could have happened, but for whatever reason they decided to forget two things. Was one, give 1-1 massive armor, Which, that is, he would have been unstoppable, but no, he just went in with his clothes. He could have got him some sort of iron plate, or for all I care, a freaking shield. And 2, they forgot to give him a weapon. So what the hell is this guy going to do? He was just set up to die, and that is something that, like, I don't like that. He could have done way more. Of course, he did amazing. Let's put it up front. Like, everything he did was amazing, but that is, he could have done so much more, and he could have made a huge difference on the battlefield. Now he was just trapped in there as well. So that was quite sad. And as you pointed out, that scene with Jon Snow emerging from all this chaos, like, it was like you saw in that moment, like, the music start kicking in, and at that moment in time, you could just see the despair in Jon Snow's eyes. Like, he was at this point, I believe, is where he could have just given up. Like, he was just, let it all happen, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, I've lost. But he decided to climb up, and this, like, amazing shout out to Daenerys' scene with her being pushed up to the heavens by the freaking slaves, that just came back, and the contrast in that was amazing. I'm 100%, like, if you put those 2 images aside, that is basically a song of ice and fire there and then.
Definitely. I do want to go ahead and touch back to something I mentioned. It's about the giant and the army. People obviously could argue that, you know, pikes have a long reach, keeping the giant at bay. But if they did a simple tactic where a few soldiers with shields defended the bottom half of the giant, now the giant has a long reach. He's a giant, for fuck's sake. If you give him a long weapon like a stump, like you mentioned, like a tree stump, then he could go ahead and attack from a long reach while being defended by a bunch of shields. But obviously, you know, I guess Jon Snow isn't that smart as Ramsay, clearly.
No, he doesn't have the same tactical mindset. Now, again, I do want to point out that Jon Snow has never been in this sort of battle. He's not seen the wars and battles as his father, Ned Stark. Well, of his father, his freaking uncle, I guess. Or at least Ned Stark. He hasn't seen those sides of battle. He's never touched upon war itself. So being put into this situation is something completely new to them. He's used to leading scouting parties. He's used to one-on-one combat, and that feeling upon his face when everything happened around him. He was like, he must have thought like, wow, this is not what I imagined this to be at all.
Definitely. Now, moving on to the next scene. So Ramsay has now realized that he has lost the war purely due to the fact that the Knights of the Vale, which obviously was all cavalry, were able to break the shield wall, causing the army to disband, break their morale, put them in a panic state. So Ramsay, on his horse, runs back to Winterfell. We see the giant and Jon Snow chasing him, followed by a bunch of cavalry and a bunch of men. And then that scene shoots to another scene where you see Ramsay now inside Winterfell. And obviously he goes, there is no way Jon Snow could break through the gate. So Ramsay has totally forgotten about the giant, or has assumed that the giant has now died. Since the giant actually goes ahead and breaks the gate. Sadly, he does die heroically. It was quite tragic for him to go away. I mean, he was so important in this war, and overall, he was such a great character. Even though he didn't really speak much, everyone just knew he was just a fantastic character to have around. And sadly, he did die breaking into Winterfell. Ramsay Bolton mentions to Jon Snow, you did say you want to have a one-on-one. Let's go ahead and do that. So they have their one-on-one. Jon Snow uses his shield, while Ramsay is shooting at him with a bow and arrow. You clearly see it's not working against Jon Snow's shield. They're able to go into contact. Jon Snow is just pounding at Ramsay's face. Ramsay has clearly lost, but Sansa comes out of nowhere, and you see Jon Snow and Sansa's eyes meet. Now, if it wasn't for Sansa, Jon Snow would have killed Ramsay, but because Sansa's there, maybe Jon Snow was like, hold on, I shouldn't kill him. Just because I don't want my sister to witness me killing Ramsay. Maybe that's the type of mindset that he had at that specific moment.
Yeah.
Now, they do keep Ramsay alive and put him in a cell. When you see later on, Sansa visits him, and sadly enough, Ramsay does die by the dogs that he kept. Obviously, his dogs were not fed for 7 days, which he mentioned. So now his dogs are hungry, even though Ramsay is their leader and they should be obedient, since they haven't been fed for 7 days. And it kind of shows Sansa's, I want to say, savage side, Sansa's ruthless side. There was no mercy there in Sansa's eyes. She was enjoying it, and she literally just killed Ramsay, and now Ramsay is dead. You see the Winterfell banners drop down, and for the first time in a really long while, the Starks were able to pull something off, and they were able to succeed and be victorious at something since like what, season 1 now.
Yeah, exactly. It was such a beautiful, like, this entire like series, this entire freaking episode was amazing in my opinion. But the last scene with 1-1 dying, it was so sad. And the annoying thing for me was that scene with 1-1 dying was more emotional than seeing Rickon die.
Precisely, just because, like I mentioned, Rickon was dead to us the moment he disappeared. We haven't seen him for like 5, 6 seasons. This guy was disappeared. He vanished. No one ever thought of Rickon ever again until they mentioned him. That's why there was no impact. But with 1-1, we saw him fight. We had that connection with him. He was a beautiful character. And to see him die heroically, helping Jon Snow, even though he's a wildling, and he's the only giant left. And now remember, these wildlings once fought against Jon Snow, and now here he is helping Jon Snow, the same person that once he fought against, and taking the Winterfell for Jon Snow. It was just beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my god. Fucking doors, man, is all I've got to say. Fucking doors.
Exactly.
Always these damn doors ruining everything. But yeah, it was beautiful. And again, like, big shout out to freaking to Ramsay being a tactical genius. And it was an interesting scene indeed, what you pointed out with Jon Snow beating the living crap out of Ramsay, and then just, it was this interesting thing during these sorts of scenes. You're all rooting for the big hero, right? You're all rooting for Jon Snow to freaking kick his ass, and with each and every punch, you're like, okay, please stop. Please, okay, that's enough. Like, he's turning into something different. He's not. He is a hero at first. At first, you're cool with it, but as he goes on, you're like, okay, enough. Please, just like put a freaking dagger to his face and get it over. But he was transforming there into something different. And as soon as he locked eyes with Sansa, everything changed. And I believe it's because at that moment in time, he figured out, all right, so he is not mine to kill. He's not mine to kill. That is the reason why he locked him up in those same cells as he kept many people in with the dogs. And at that moment in time, well, good question. Why did Rickon run in a straight line though?
Because he wanted to die. I guess that was the situation. Rickon was like, fuck it. I just want to run in a straight line. Let's go ahead and leave my fate into the god's hands. And well, he died. He's a twat. He
when in doubt, just serpentine. Just serpentine. Just go in circles, do whatever, but don't run in the straight line. Unless you pointed out Ramsay Snow would have had an AK-47, but then again, I don't know what would have saved him.
I do want to go ahead and mention with Jon Snow. Now, obviously, I guess you would have done the same thing if you just saw your brother die. You know, with all the things that Jon Snow went through. The fact that obviously Jon Snow knows that he raped Sansa. Now he just killed his brother that he hasn't seen since season 1. Die before his eyes as Jon Snow was just about to save him. So I do understand where Jon Snow is now coming from. And obviously the guy died and now he's back alive. So he has gone through a lot as a character. He has almost seen everything. And like the way he's now being built, like he must be emotionally unstable. And I do see what you're saying, like what he was doing was quite the savagery way. That's something that he normally wouldn't do as a character. So obviously once he's locked on with Sansa's eyes, he was like, this is not who I am, I'm going to stop here. Finish him off in this type of way. Torturing him almost isn't the way I do things. But then again, we saw Sansa, the way she killed Ramsay with the dogs. Now, that was such a disgusting scene. I wouldn't really have expected that from a character like Sansa to kill Ramsay in such a disgusting, humiliating way. Yeah. Being killed by your own obedient dogs, being eaten alive, tortured. But clearly, both these characters, both Jon Snow and Sansa, have changed a lot from how they were back a few seasons ago. or the events that happen. Now the thing is, Ramsay said, "I'll always live on." So now this could mean Sansa is pregnant. Therefore, meaning when she gives birth, that child will be half would have Ramsay's blood. But the thing is, if that's the case, why wouldn't Sansa kill the baby or have an abortion? Unless Sansa's like, I mean, who else would know if Sansa was to have a child apart from herself that the child is a bastard from Ramsay? God knows.
Technically speaking, it wouldn't be a bastard if she gave birth to her child would have been a Bolton.
True, yeah, it would have been a Bolton.
But still, I know what you're pointing out. I don't think she could be pregnant. To be fair, yeah, she could be pregnant for all we know. We've all know, like Cersei pointed out many seasons ago when she asked, "Have you bled yet?"
Precisely.
That she has bled and she is definitely capable of giving birth. So, but yeah, like I think that's a far stretch. I think that this is the end of Ramsay and the Bolton reign. Now it is an amazing thing to see, because what we saw over here is something that has been going on for years upon decades upon. It's insane. Like the Ramsay, the Boltons and the Starks go back for thousands of years, and they've been battling out for thousands of years. And Winterfell has been captured before by the Boltons, but always was retaken by the Starks, and we saw this happen once again. So it is quite brutal. And like you pointed out, the way Ramsay came to die was absolutely disgusting and insane. It is amongst the most brutal deaths we've seen. For the main characters, that is. Let's put it up front, because there's a lot of because we've seen the Hounds come into play on multiple occasions. I think at the beginning of season 5, a girl got chased down by the same dogs and she came to the same end. But seeing it happen like that up close, and damn, that dog sent shivers down my fucking spine, man. That thing was disgusting.
Definitely. I mean, it was quite sad seeing Ramsay die, even though he is a dickhead and he tortured Theo and he raped Sansa, like done all these bad things. But he's such a well-built character. He is so smart. The guy's a genius, and he's a really good bad guy. You know, he knows what he's doing. And the actor himself, I loved him in Misfits. I just loved him in Game of Thrones. And it's sad to now see him die and leave Game of Thrones. I would have liked him to stay longer, but I guess with the plot, obviously, he now does have to die. But he was a great character. He will be missed. It was just a fantastic ending.
Yeah. Gotta go, but before I do, how badass was Grey killing the two masters? Yeah, absolutely insane, man. That freaking double kill of the ages.
I know, it was beautiful the way he just approached them casually, took out his dagger, and did like one slice move and they both died. It was beautiful. It was brutal and beautiful.
Yes. Long live Grey Worm.
Yes, long live Grey Worm.
now, like, there's something like interesting, like, because there's always been this bad guy, right? There's always been a bad guy, and there's always been another bad guy coming into play just before the other bad guy died. So we've seen this happen with Joffrey, because Joffrey was the center of everyone's hate for the longest time, and before he died, Ramsay Bolton came into play. So, and all focus starts shifting towards Ramsay. And now Ramsay has died, and there's only one person in Westeros at the moment that has that potential to be the next badass, the next bad guy, and that is, in my opinion, Euron Greyjoy. I
disagree.
What do you think it is?
The reason why I'm saying I disagree is, what can he do that is more ruthless and more brutal than Ramsay? This guy, he is building ships to go ahead and sail to Marine. With what purpose? To have Dany by his side, right? Correct? Yes. Okay, so what could he do that's worse than Ramsay? Kill dragons, which he most probably will kill a dragon or two. Maybe kill Yara or kill Theon. I doubt he will kill the Khaleesi. Dany's going to live on, and then they're going to have that plot with Dany and Jon Snow. So what else could he do that's to make him look more of a badass or an evil person? In my opinion, nothing. He's gonna have an epic battle with Yara, the boats, etc. with Dany. He's gonna end up dying or just losing and then surrendering to Yara. the only potential bad guy left is the Night King, the White Walkers and the Whites. They are the only potential enemies, in my opinion. The evil guys left, and I think that's how it's gonna move on. The attention is going to rotate now with the bastards now finished. It's gonna rotate with what's happening in the capital with the religious individuals with the High Sparrow, and obviously with Cersei. It's gonna rotate to Dany and with obviously the naval battle that hopefully does happen with Euron Greyjoy, and then it's gonna rotate back to Jon Snow and Dany and the White Walkers. I think that's how it's all gonna play out.
Yeah. I know 100% where you're getting at with Euron. You don't think that Euron's going to be that bad guy. In the books, he's portrayed a little bit differently as he is in the series so far. He doesn't have, of course, not a lot of screen time. But this guy in the books is absolutely mental. He's insane. Like, he is Ramsay level insane. We've always seen some sort of like center of all hatred on screen for the longest time in Game of Thrones. So it has to be someone. It has to be someone. And of course, the Night's King. The Night's King is not that. That is not that. Of course, he is this character. He's like the main villain.
They killed Hodor.
They fucking killed Hodor.
They killed the children of the forest, the last remaining children of the forest. They killed the Raven.
What
else does a bad guy have to do to become a bad guy?
Exactly. And he's not on the same level as Ramsay, or let's put it this way. He is the embodiment of evil, right? Of killing, of whatever. But Ramsay and Joffrey were the embodiment of human insanity. And that is why they were different than the Night King.
This season is coming up to an end. It's wrapping up. Then we have 2 seasons left. I don't think that's enough screen time. Well, that's about 24 episodes in total for them to introduce Euron Greyjoy, for him to do a few bad things, and then for him to die. Like, what could he do that's on like a Ramsay level? Because Ramsay was worse than Joffrey, in my opinion. So in my opinion, Euron now has to be worse than Ramsay. But Ramsay is so fucked up and twisted. What could Euron do that's more fucked up and twisted than what Ramsay and Joffrey has now done? I don't think there's enough time for him to do something crazy. What is he doing right now? Building ships. Okay, so right now he's spending time building ships. What are those ships? Where is he going to sail? To Marine. So what could he do apart from killing the 3 dragons and like Theon Greyjoy? What else can he do?
That is all up to speculation at this moment in time. Like, I'm a firm believer of what happened to Joffrey. We all had that same mindset with Joffrey back in the day, because Joffrey was this insane bad guy, and he was twisted. But there came Ramsay, who was a million times more twisted than Joffrey.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know actually. Like, let's put him side to side for a split second, right? So you have Joffrey on one end, you have Ramsay on the other end. Now, Joffrey did things because he was the king. He had some horrible decision making. That's Joffrey on one end of the spectrum. Now, Ramsay. No, it's definitely Ramsay who's the worst one. Like, I'm picturing everything.
The thing with Joffrey is that number one, the only reason why Joffrey was a bad person is because Joffrey had the power to be a bad person. And secondly, Joffrey is way younger than Ramsay. Like, Joffrey is still a child. So there's so much you could do. Okay, he killed Ned Stark. Okay, he tortured Sansa. Okay, he killed whores rather than fucking them because he's stupid. But then again, obviously he's still a child, and you know, there wasn't so much he could do. But then Ramsay, what he's doing is all for his personal game and his own twisted thoughts, and he's just a twisted character individual with or without power. I mean, he had no power until he killed his father. He was a bastard. I doubt Joffrey would have killed his father to become the king. There was no way I believe Joffrey would do such a thing. But Ramsay, he was twisted from the get-go. He didn't need power to be twisted. So what is Euron now going to do? He has no power, but well, now he does, since obviously he is the king of the Iron Islands. So with that power, what is he going to do? Build ships and then do what? Have a massive fight with Yara and obviously with Daenerys. So with Dany. So it's like there's 2 seasons left. The last season, I'm going to assume is mainly going to be the White Walkers versus Jon Snow versus Dany. I'm assuming season 2, I mean the first season, next season is going to be focused on Euron and Dany. So that'll be that season, and season after that will be the White Walkers. Another thing that I do want to quickly mention is that I don't think, even if Dany was to come to Westeros, I don't think she has a place there, just because everyone looks down upon the Khaleesi and their way of life. I mean, no one likes Dothrakians, and if someone like Dany was to rule Westeros with all her Dothraki friends living in Westeros, I have a feeling that will cause something like a massive rebellion, like a civil war between the countries. So I don't think it's smart for her to move to Westeros. That's just something that I wanted to point out.
Exactly. Interesting. Now, well, we have someone in the chat, Dylan Burke, who pointed out something interesting. He thinks that, let me scroll up a little bit, sorry, that Euron will kill Yara. Now, I don't know, it could happen, right? It could happen, it could fully happen that Yara will die by the hands of Euron. And it could, but then again, why would Dany support Euron after that? I don't see that.
I don't think Dany would support Euron ever, just because I think it's like female power, you know? Because her and Yara, they have too many things in common. Bad fathers, the first female rulers. So I have a feeling that's why Dany would want to support her and help her take back the Iron Islands. As well as that, I don't think Yara will die. I think Theon will die, just because Theon went through a lot. And, you know, he has been here since season 1. So, and he is a really important main character since the things that he's gone through and the impacts that he had. I mean, at the end of the day, he took Winterfell. You know, he rebelled against Winterfell. So he has done a lot, and he has been a big character. So I have a feeling maybe he's going to die for Yara. Or he's going to do one last heroic thing before he just dies, as a way to portray himself that now he is a good person. Because obviously before he was a good person, then he did something bad by attacking Winterfell. So we're all like, you know what, he deserves to be tortured to an extent. And then obviously we felt sorry for him. And then if he does something good, so if he saves Yara from Euron or something like that, and dies in that way, it would just be a perfect way to conclude everything.
Exactly. Jefferson points out 2 interesting things. It's hard to rebel against dragons, and yes, I fully agree on that. It has been, it has happened before. Like the dragons have fallen. The dragons have been dead for the longest times, and they're not impossible to kill, as we have seen when when Drogon came into the Colosseum. He was obviously hurt by the arrows and by all that pointy sticks they threw at him. So it is not impossible. We've seen a giant get taken out by a ballista, so it is totally possible. But of course, they are weapons of mass destruction, so it's going to take a lot of skillful archers to take him down, although it is not impossible. So, we also have... will the 2 other dragons get a rider? Now, this is something very interesting, Jefferson, because... In many Reddit posts, of course, and many speculation posts, it's pretty much 100% clear that Jon Snow is actually Jon Targaryen. So, which might put him into the position to ride a dragon. Now, dragon bonding is what you need to become a dragon rider. That is not for everyone. It's a long process, and a Targaryen is not per se a dragon rider. Now, I do believe that it is, if anyone would ride a dragon, it's going to be Jon Snow and Dany. Now, Tyrion is another interesting thing. A lot of people think that Tyrion is a Lannister as well, or Lannister a Targaryen. Now, this is very far-fetched, a very far-fetched theory. But it basically the Mad King. This is according to theories. The Mad King raped Tywin's wife, if I recall correctly, and that gave them, and that act gave birth to Tyrion. So that makes Tyrion a Targaryen. But I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
The only reason why that theory was brought up is because the dragons did not attack Tyrion. Now, the thing is, could you not call everyone else a Targaryen? Those who are also not attacked by the dragon. I mean, you have scenes where Dany is another individual, and that dragon doesn't attack that individual just because they're friends. And the dragons are smart, so I doubt it's because Tyrion is a Targaryen. It just has to be the fact that the dragons are smart and are aware of who their enemies are and who their enemies are not.
Yeah, and prone, like, dude, Tyrion was the ultimate badass when talking to those dragons. That was like a beautiful scene. I love that scene. Although he had a little bit of poop dangling in his underwear during that point.
Definitely.
But still, that was an intense freaking scene. Now going a little bit further, have you seen the preview at all for the next episode?
No.
Well, it's not like in every finale of the seasons of Game of Thrones. This is all about wrapping things up. So we saw a whole lot of stuff, a lot of talking in this episode. It's all wrapping things up nicely for the next season, because it's such a sad thing, man. We have to wait for another year in a week. Like a full year, man. So
You have to wait a full year. That is true. That is the case. But you know what? It was a good season. A lot of things happened. They did move on things pretty fast, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. But I'm glad we got to see a massive battle scene before the season ended. So I'm happy with what has happened.
Yeah, exactly. You were pretty vocal about how you didn't like that the series was going on. Well, at least with the pace, let's put it that way. You liked the series, of course, that's the reason why you watch it, but you had some issues with the pace, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. The reason why I hated the pace, as you all know, Game of Thrones was always a slow show full of character development, full of plot holes, full of twists, full of all these complex things. And in this season, it was really dumbed down. Everything was way too obvious. We all knew Ramsay wasn't going to win this one way or another. I was personally aware that the Knights of the Vale were going to appear. So it was just, in my opinion, it was too obvious. And we all know how Game of Thrones once was. Like when Ned Stark got betrayed by Littlefinger, who knew that was going to happen? That was totally random and unpredictable, and it was beautiful. But lately, it's almost as if they were like, fuck it with all the plot twists, plot holes, these theories. Let's just go ahead and wrap everything up as fast as possible. We only have 2 seasons left. Game of Thrones is massive as it is. You know, there's no point introducing Lady Stoneheart, making things more complicated and I want to say interesting. Let's just quickly finish this, and I just don't like it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can, like, on one hand, I can fully get behind that. It's this entire last season we've been witnessing right now is nothing like the previous seasons we've seen before. But then again, a lot of reasons why, like the big reason why people cannot get into Game of Thrones is because the pace is so slow. Which I can get behind as well. Like, it's a slow thing, but you need to really sit down for it. And once you get invested in certain characters, then you're going to cry because they're all dying. But then it like really drags you into the entire big thing. And like, yeah, I do get what you're coming from with that. Like, the way this season is like just plowing forward, I don't like that at all either. Like, it's going a little bit too fast, but then again, I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to wrap things up, and they're trying to do it a little bit faster as they've done before. But like, seeing a character like Rickon die and having no, like, I didn't feel anything. Like, of course it was a sad scene, but I didn't invest any time in this character. Like, he had a bit of screen time in season 3. We've not seen him for 3 seasons. Then he came back in one little episode. Oh my god, he's still alive. Still didn't really like. I didn't get warm or cold because of that. And then we saw him die, and I was like, sad, very sad.
The issue with Game of Thrones is if they started increasing the pace of the TV show, earlier on, rather than rushing things towards the last 2 seasons, or this season specifically, if they started picking up the pace slowly from the get-go, like in season 2 or season 3 they started, pacing a bit faster, then it wouldn't be as disappointing as it now is, because right now it really feels they're rushing things just because we're normally used to a slow show. And because that change is too dramatic, there's only 2 seasons left, I don't think it's working out well personally for me anyway. I mean, you mentioned having a slow TV show is a bad thing, but since Walking Dead was mentioned in this chat that we have here, Walking Dead is a slow TV show, and Walking Dead is quite successful if you look at the charts. There are many seasons where the characters do nothing but try to survive the zombie outbreak, and the last season of The Walking Dead, it wasn't fast paced, it was still quite slow. But that's just The Walking Dead. With this TV show here, Game of Thrones is also slow, but they just picked up the pace for the last season, and in my opinion, that's just a bad move. If the directors were smart, they would have picked up the pace a bit. Around fourth season specifically, just so as a viewer we are used to it. We are used to the TV show moving on. But just because if they moved the pace a bit faster, maybe we could have had Lady Stoneheart if there was enough time, if there was enough seasons to introduce a new character. But it's too late now, just because they moved it too slow and now they're rushing it. There is just no time slot to move her in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a sad thing. Like, lots of major characters from the books got either like cancelled or they got tossed into one character, like Benjen Stark. Benjen Stark came back, and he's like this hybrid in between Cold Hands and Benjen, of course. So that's a sad thing as well. Like Cold Hands was a really interesting character, and he didn't make the cut at all. So I
guess it's just not to make it complicated for the viewers. It's so stupid, because if the books are complicated, because the story, because Game of Thrones as itself is such a rich story and such a rich world to live in, and the fact that they dumb it down because they have viewers who are unable to understand, is just stupid. That's such a stupid move, because it takes away from what the TV show could have really been.
I can't agree with you there. Like, from a book perspective, there is too much material to put it all into a series. There's way too much. Funny fact, in the books, there's 25 characters named Jon. How the hell are you going to write that in?
I'm not talking about those extra. I'm talking about mainly Cold Hands and Lady Stone. Those characters, if they could have introduced them and just made the TV show a bit more rich, like the books. No, I'm not saying introduce every single other side character just to make the TV show a bit more interesting. I'm talking about the really, really big ones, like, once again, mainly Lady Stoneheart and Cold Hands.
Exactly. Very, very. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting point of view, right? But then again, there's so many characters that should have made the cut, but they didn't. But that's gone. It's moving forward. It's moving forward very quickly. Let's put it up front. We have another question from Jefferson. From Dylan and Jefferson, to be fair. Dylan asks, isn't the Stark name gone now? Sansa is a Bolton, Jon Snow is a Targaryen, and Bran won't go south. Well, of course, Bran is still Bran Stark. We have Arya still in play as well, but there's 2 female Starks south of the Wall at the moment. Now, no one has a claim on the throne unless Jon Snow gets to be a Stark. He could get legitimated by the crown, which of course will never ever happen at this moment, because why would Tommen do that? That's absolutely ridiculous. Like, they are at war with the Starks. But that's the only claim there is to the Starks right now, unless of course they find out in time that Jon Snow is a Targaryen. So that's intriguing. But there's only 2 characters right now alive that know the parentage of Jon Snow. Of course, one of them is Bran, and the other one is south of the Wall. And there's another character still alive right now, which could come into play, which is another one of those characters that did not make any screen time whatsoever. Well, no, one little scene actually. One little scene he was in. And this character's name is Howland Reed. And Howland Reed is a man that was with Ned Stark at the Tower of Joy. He was the one that cut down Arthur Dayne instead of the stories that you heard, like Ned Stark killed the biggest swordsman alive, Arthur Dayne. It was Howland Reed that did that. Howland Reed was there, and he's still alive. So yes, that is quite intriguing. I hope he comes into play as well.
Yeah. Okay, so Jefferson asked, who is Lady Stoneheart? So Lady Stoneheart is Catelyn Stark, who comes back alive for vengeance, and I guess that's it, vengeance and revenge.
Yeah.
She leads the Brotherhood without banners, who we see, who are the individuals that attack, who they attack again? I totally just forgot.
They don't attack anyone. Well, they did. The little band. Yeah, the little bands that went AWOL and went messing things up. Those were a part of the Brotherhood without Bannerman. But yeah. Brotherhood without Bannerman? The Bannerman? What? What am I talking about? Those guys. So Lady Stoneheart leads those guys instead of Thoros of Myr, that fire priest that brings back that guy from the dead all the time. So Lady Stoneheart takes his place, and I think his name is Derek Bondurandrum, something like that. So, my God, we and names, man. There's too many names in Game of Thrones. But either way, Lady Stoneheart takes his place and leads the Brotherhood right there. So we had another question. Yes, well, not a question, a statement from Jefferson as well. Rickon was just bait for Jon, and not just bait for Jon, he was just plot bait, to be fair, and that's, I don't like that. Hello?
Mark just said, but if you're able to pull up pictures or screenshots during the stream, we already have been doing that. Well, we've been changing the images, if you are aware. So if you go back to the start of the stream, you'll go ahead and see that the images were different.
Yeah.
But when we talk about things that we weren't prepared for, like Lady Stoneheart, for example, we didn't have those images there. We usually do have Oopdoop, like Pearl just mentioned. We normally have Oopdoop drawing something fantastic. Obviously, you guys, the chat, you're able to give your own feedback and inform Oopdoop what you want drawn, and he goes ahead, and he's our artist, so he goes ahead and he starts drawing. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make to the stream, so instead we have a few screenshots of the episode prepared for you guys to enjoy. But I think that pretty much sums up today's episode and the preview, correct?
Indeed, it has, and we will be back next week for the last episode. It's going to be one hell of an episode. I can't wait to watch it, of course, and to chat about it again. It was awesome hanging out with you, Daka. Daka, pop your name into chat, and lovely people of Chatland, subscribe to this man because he does amazing live streams.
No, I wouldn't advise that.
It's perfectly in tune with all of your Game of Thrones content, so definitely do that. It's amazing stuff. But either way, guys, thank you all for watching. Daka, thank you for tuning in once again and helping me out with this live stream. Thank you for hosting.
Thank you, Sonny.
All right, and everyone in Chatland, thank you so much for tuning in, and peace out. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.